Hey guys, so we've talked about selections, we talked about the importance of selections inside of Photoshop. Now we want to talk about how Photoshop selects via the edges of things, the edges of your selection, especially when it comes to images, because when we want to fake something or make something believable, we need a blurriness to take place, and that blurriness or that fuzziness is called anti-aliasing. And let's look at this right now. Look at the difference between these two edges. These two edges, one is anti-aliased and the other one is aliased. Notice the difference between them. I've zoomed out so you can see what's labeled as which, but the anti-aliased one on the left side has a fuzziness to it, and the aliased one has a jagged edge to it. This fuzziness is important because when we start to composite images together, we want that fuzziness to help us make things more believable. If they were jagged, like the aliased version of that circle, everything would look like an 8-bit game. Now, I'm not knocking 8-bit games, but for all intents and purposes for our projects, we kind of want to make things believable. Even on the verge of stylized, we kind of want to sell the version that people can or viewers can believe in. So let's try to aim for that. However, I did want to show you a more beefed up version of that blurriness or that fuzziness edge. And that comes into play when you start to play around with feathering. Notice that in my selection tools, my marquee tools, there's an option for feathering amount. And so I'm going along making selections, changing my feathering amount. I believe the first one has a 0 amount, and then there's 10, 20, and then 40. Notice the difference when I fill it with color. Notice how different the edges look and how fuzzy they are. We go from not fuzzy at all or very limited fuzziness to completely blurred. And that all has to do with the amount of feathering. And if we were to zoom in on this, that feathering not only blurs the edges, but it's also a transparency range. Like if I were to put another color behind that purple, we would be able to see that color beneath it. So we're not only adjusting the amount of fuzziness that you can see on the surface, but when you start to put things behind other things, you can notice that they are transparent. I'm going to try the same things with a rectangular marquee. So there's a 0 feathering amount. Notice that the edges are nice and crisp. There is a 10 feathering amount. Notice that my selection has changed from a crisp rectangle to one that looks like a rectangle with rounded corners. And eventually, when I get to a amount of 40, that it changes almost to a complete circle. Look at that. And then it blurs out the entire thing. Again, all of this done with playing with the feathering amount And again, which is tied very much to anti-aliasing, or that fuzzy edge. Let's take a look on how this feathering amount affects images. So I've done fill color, but in these selections, I am starting to play with selecting actual photograph selections and using those same amounts, 10, 20, and 40. Look how blurred that edge is, all playing with feathered amounts. Now again, this will play a bigger role when we start to composite things and to make things believable, all using that feathering amount.